Hi, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today, incorporating visual communication tools in financial planning. We're going to give everybody just a couple minutes to get into our meeting. And so while we wait, I was curious today, since we're in the Thanksgiving mode, what's your favorite Thanksgiving side dish? If you want to drop that in the chat, we'd love to start hearing all about it. And I think
cranberries is the big one coming in. Stuffing.
Yes. Definitely cooked inside the turkey. Oh, I love it. And for myself, it's basic, but green bean
casserole. There's some good ones here.
Yeah. Oh, Mike, I'm right there with you. And just kind of the same way, the way they tell you to do it on the back of the Campbell's mushroom soup can. Now, I think fancy, just straight up. Mashed sweet potatoes, absolutely. It's Mike, don't you have something a little unusual or
well,
unique?
My family, we're French Canadian background, so it's the tourtière. It's a French Canadian meat pie that has to be at every Thanksgiving.
That sounds, I'm intrigued by that every year. So one of these years, we're going to have to figure out a way to fly it out here to St. Louis to me. Bill, I respect that so much. Oh man, I'm ready for lasagna appetizer. That sounds delicious. I'll take it. Okay, well, we've been here for about 2 minutes, so I would imagine that we've got quite a few of our participants in the call. First of all, welcome. My name is Amy Burge. I'm Stacia Waren's stunt double apparently today. And I'd love to welcome everybody to today's webinar, which is incorporating visual communication in your financial planning. Our panel today is pretty impressive. All three people are financial planners. The first person we'll hear from today is Mike Lecours, who also happens to be the co-founder of fpPathfinder. He'll be followed by Travis Gatzemeier, who's also a CFP and founder and financial planner at Kinetix. We will bring up the rear with Mike Zung and some of his beautiful financial plans. He's a principal at Java Wealth, and I think you're going to love what everybody has to say. And oh my gosh, I just see that Linda Maroney joined from my past life in an RIA, so it's nice to see you, Linda. Everybody, have a great webinar, Mike, and take it away.
Great, thank you, Amy. So I'm very excited for today. This is a very interesting topic that I've been following for quite some time. Earlier this year, I wrote an article for Kinetix.com about visualizations, and it led to some additional conversations and ultimately to why we're here today, because there are some really awesome things happening in the space of visualizations and financial planning. But just to bring everybody up to speed, I want to start off by sharing an example. This example has absolutely nothing to do with finance. This deals with, it's an example, it's something that happened in the art industry, in the art realm. And specifically, it dealt with a man, Alfred Barr, who had a really big problem that he had to solve. Now, Alfred Barr was basically the curator or organizer for a museum, and he had a giant exhibit of abstract art coming through. And he had to convince people to pay money to come in and see abstract art. Now, if you're not familiar with abstract art, it's paintings like this, right? There's things where they don't just jump out at you. You have to know a little bit about the art and the style behind it. Just generally, you might not appreciate it intuitively, okay? And this was all happening back in the 1930s when this was like brand new art and there was no internet. So it was really hard for people to want to come in and see this stuff because they didn't appreciate it. And if they did come in here, they might walk into another room, or maybe they would just turn around and leave shortly afterwards. So Alfred's problem is like, how do I get people to come in here to pay money for something that they probably don't understand or they don't fully appreciate? So that's the job of the museum, right? And Alfred's looking at what the way things have been done in the past. He goes, well, we could write up these cool little placards and write text to accompany the art. And so you could walk up and maybe you see this painting and it looks interesting to you. And then you kind of step a little bit closer and you can read the description to understand what this means. I'm like, okay, well, that's a start. Maybe you're going to read a couple of those. If anybody's been to an art museum, you might read a few, but not all of them. So Alfred's looking at this and he goes, you know what? Here's the other idea. We could just do a lot of tours. Just offer lots of tours. And so people could come through, we'll take them around and we'll show them exactly what all of this art means so they can develop the appreciation. Well, he found problems with that too. So he took one step back. He goes, I need to get people in this room in the first place. And so what he did was he came up with a flow chart. This flow chart here. And when you look at this flow chart, it's designed to just try to draw somebody in. It's intuitive. It's easy to follow. You spend a moment looking at this relative to all of those paintings I just showed you. And you start to see this and you start drawing connections. Somebody that doesn't have a lot or any experience with abstract art might start to draw some connections here. They might look at this and say, oh, I see Van Gogh up here in the left-hand corner. I've seen that artist before. What that influenced this other style of art, Fauvism, and then that influenced Expressionism. And now we're down to Surrealism. And all of a sudden, we're starting to draw connections with, I think it's 30 words over here and a bunch of arrows. And all of a sudden, that's creating something there to make it accessible for average people to understand what they're looking at. So this was actually used as a marketing piece. It was designed to get people to understand what modern art was so they could come in here and understand what they're going to be looking at. Allowed the average person to come in and explore the gallery or the museum. So let me just pause here and draw the connection. The art that I was showing here, for a lot of people, it's more or less like it's a jumble of colors and shapes, okay? Clients might be running into the same kind of thing. They see financial statements, they're hearing financial terms, they look at a will or insurance contract or a financial plan, something tax related. And for a lot of them, it's just a jumble of numbers and charts. They don't understand what it all means. And so our job as financial advisors is to help explain that to them. And a lot of the ways we've helped to explain it in the past has been, let's write up a long email explaining what they're about to look at, or let's call the client in and have them walk through it with them and show them what all of these charts and all the meaning behind this really is. But what's really cool here is that the industry's changing. We've started to see this happen, and we've got some people that are really pushing the envelope as to what we can do with visualizations. They're like our modern equivalent of what Alfred Barr was doing many, many years ago. And so I'm going to be really excited just to dig in and hear how these two are really using this with their clients and what they're doing. And so before I invite Travis to come on over here, I just want to show one perspective of how these things look and the process that our minds go through when an average person looks at any kind of visual. The first thing they do is they just are looking at this. Chances are in that previous slide, when I pull that up, you didn't see anything at first. You were just trying to make sense of the different variables, the colors. What's the title about, right? You're just looking, you're taking the whole thing in. Then you move on to the next spot. You start to see something. You're seeing information. Maybe you're seeing some themes or trends, right? Something's starting to stand out for you. Then you move on to the next stage. We call it imagine here, but basically it's impact. What does this mean? What stands out to you? Is there a trend that now you start to see, how does this affect me? And finally, you can move on to the last stage. And this is where that person understands this to the point where they can then go around and explain it to somebody else. Maybe they're going back to their spouse and saying, hey, I just learned about this thing in our financial plan, and this visual makes it so clear. Let me show it to you. Or maybe they're going back to their advisor and saying, hey, I'm looking at this visual and here's this theme that I'm seeing. What do you think about it? Can we talk about this? So that's where we are at the high level. And I'd love for us to dig in and talk about how advisors are actually using this with their clients. So Travis, first of all, welcome. And thank you for coming on over here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I'd love to kick it off and just tell us, what are you doing with visualizations? And I guess, how did you get started with this?
Sure. So visualizations for me basically kind of started when I first launched my practice, and I basically saw a number of advisors doing kind of the one-page plan thing. They had a couple of visuals in there, and I was just like, wow, that's really cool to be able to boil a plan down rather into a one-page or two-page document to show clients kind of what they need to know, like the important things they want to know. And then for myself, I felt like I wasn't explaining some topics to clients to my best ability. So I'm a visual person myself. So I started creating little visuals, kind of flowchart type things, just to explain topics and things like that. And really, it was for me to be able to help the client understand what I was talking about as an advisor. And since I'm a visual person, that helped me kind of translate what I was trying to get across to my clients. So that's kind of how the visualizations for me started.
Right. Oh, that makes a lot of sense to me. So I guess, can you share a couple of what you're working on now and kind of walk us through it?
Yeah, let's dive in. And for me, I start with visualizations in the prospect process, which I'm actually going to show here. So 1 second, I'll pop this up here. Let me know if you got it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's dive in. So I use visuals actually when someone is interested in working with me. That's when I first introduce a visual to a prospective client. So as you can see on my screen here, someone is basically interviewing me to work with them, I put together what I call a strategy session for them. And to do this, I basically gather some really high level views. So it's like a 10,000 foot view of someone's situation. And I'll plug this into Right Capital. And now that Right Capital has the blueprint feature, I've been utilizing the blueprint net worth, which is what you see on my screen here. This is actually the first page of the strategy session that I cover with a prospective client. And the whole strategy session is about 3 pages. But this is the only visual I use for prospective clients. And this has really allowed the clients to kind of, it's not their full net worth, right? At this point, I just have very rough data, but it's the kind of high level information that they've given me. And plugging this into Right Capital, now the data spits out this blueprint, and I plug this into my basically Google document to show them kind of what it looks like, how their net worth is broken down. And a lot of people have mentioned, hey, I've never seen my net worth broken out like this, or a visual like this for my net worth. And even though it's not everything, every part of their detailed financial picture, it gives them an understanding of, hey, here's some visualizations that we may look at if you do decide to move forward with me.
Let me just stop there for a second, because the alternative to something like this would be like a more or less like a statement of net worth or something like that. What are some of the actual feedback that you're hearing from prospective clients when they see this?
So, I mean, the feedback is basically like, wow, I've never seen my net worth broken out like this. And I've only been using this visual. So I used to not even have this front page here. Just started using this when Right Capital kind of brought out that blueprint feature. And so far, people kind of have enjoyed seeing this based on, limited feedback, right? It seems like it's kind of adding, instead of it being all words, it kind of, to me, at least, it kind of breaks up instead of being just a bunch of bullet points throughout this presentation, gives us something to look at and kind of generate a discussion in the beginning of it. And that's one thing I have found with visuals is whether it's a prospect or a client, the visual items generate more conversation, right? So it's not, you don't get that glossy look. They kind of stare at it for a second, may ask some questions, it kind of strikes up a little more conversation. And I think that's just because for most people, they like that visual content.
Yeah. Wearing my financial advisor hat, we used Asset Map in the past, and there was a noticeable difference if we showed something that was more or less like a table or a chart to a client. Their immediate instinct was to lean back in their chair to start to take it in. When you put the Asset Map or this equivalent in front of them, they would lean forward to get into it. You could just tell the body reaction was completely different.
Exactly. And then on the next page, I actually, right on cue, I'm going to compare the differences between showing them like a spreadsheet versus the visual and another visual I use. If we want to jump into that now.
Yeah, I'd love to.
All right. So typically, especially when I first launched my practice, still do use spreadsheets for kind of strategic planning and short-term things and managing cash flows and stuff like that, right? So that's what you see on the left here. So for a lot of clients, they see all these numbers here and they just kind of are like, what am I even looking at here? And you can add these percentages like I have over here on the right, but they still, for most people, they don't understand numbers and percentages. And then you have to explain it. And it takes a lot of back and forth to explain these things to them, right? So what I do with this typically is I still use a spreadsheet to collect all the data. Some clients like spreadsheets, right? But the majority of them just want to be able to see it really quickly and then dive into the detail afterwards. So instead of using spreadsheets for a lot of deliverables, I translate that into what's called a Sankey diagram, right? Or a Sankey chart. And this helps the client really quickly visualize the impact of certain things. So this is very, very simple. You can go much more deeper and much more complex with this to every detail of their spending and savings and taxes and things like that. But to me, clients really understand the impact of these things when you can look at for lack of a simpler term, the width of each of these columns, each of these charts, right? Each of these flows. So, for example, you can look at the impact you're saving compared to your total income. And over here on the left side, when you use a spreadsheet, it's a little more difficult to do that, right? You just see that number percentage and sometimes that doesn't jive with a client. So seeing it on one chart, seeing the flows on how they go from their salary, their cash flows to their taxes, expenses, savings, and things like that can really help them quickly understand their cash flow.
So when a client sees this, what kinds of questions do they start asking you after seeing this in a diagram form?
Yeah, so most common one is, wow, I pay that much in taxes. That's the first one every single time. Typically when someone starts working with me, the savings is smaller, right? So they can really see like, I feel like I'm saving more than that. I'm not, or I feel like I spend that much money. So those are the two common ones outside of taxes. And then obviously as you're working with them, you make the recommendations, they take action on the action items, and they increase savings, they decrease expenses, maybe reduce taxes, those sort of things. You can kind of compare, here's your current situation. And if we make these adjustments, here's what the visualization of your new proposed scenario would be.
That's terrific.
So any other question? You want me to dive deeper on the Sankey, or going to flip over to one other visual?
I think it's good. Just as a side note, for folks that are listening in, there's also a pretty interesting chat going on, just going into some of the details about Sankey and where you can create these and how some other folks are actually using this in their software or their tech stack. So just pointing that out, that there's a side conversation going on there. But yeah, please, Travis, continue. What's next here?
Sure. So another visual that I use with clients is my one-page scorecard, which is basically a one-page plan, but I call it a financial scorecard. And this is where I use tools that are basically available to me since I use Right Capital. They have the snapshot feature in which I pull that data into this scorecard. So typically, a couple of years ago, when I started creating one-page plans and the scorecard, I would basically pull all the data over from, let's say, Right Capital into either a Google document sheet or plugging this into Canva, which I use to create this particular scorecard. So now I don't have to manually put all these data points in there because it's already entered into Right Capital, and I just pull the data from Right Capital in a screenshot form and plug it into Canva. That way, I don't have to do more work as far as bringing data over to create this. And when I say the snapshot feature, this is what I'm talking about here. These data numbers that you see.
Mm-hmm.
This is what comes directly from Right Capital, which adding the snapshot feature has made it much more easy for me because now I can just go grab a screenshot of this and plug it into my template, which is in Canva.
Right.
So this visual right here has been received very well for clients, even before I was using the data directly from Right Capital, just because it gives them everything they need to know in one simple page.
And Travis, when you're creating this, are you doing this for clients? Is it once a year? Are you doing it once every quarter? Like, how often are they seeing this kind of visual here?
Are you still there? I think you cut out. Did I cut out or did you cut out?
I don't know. How often are you sending this to clients? Is it once a quarter, every month, or once a year?
Yeah, so I'm updating this right now once a year for clients. And glad you asked. On the next slide, I do have something I am potentially rolling out next year for clients as far as how I'm going to utilize this in multiple time frames throughout the year with different subjects attached to them. So basically packaging up the one-page scorecard, and instead of it just being, for example, this information here, I'm going to be plugging in new information in this and creating this for clients on a 2 to 3 times a year basis.
So the conversation might be a little bit different every couple of months, depending on what you're putting in there. So like, are you able to tell us a little bit more about where you're going with that?
Yeah. So instead of just doing a one page scorecard that's the same kind of data points every single year right now on that annual time that I give this, what Right Capital allows you to do in the snapshot feature is adjust these different metrics, right? So for example, next year I'm going to be testing out creating different topics within the scorecard for different times of the year, right? So if you see on this top left one here, I'm able to put in the same kind of high level things like net worth, tax rate, savings rate, things like that. But I'm also including like insurance in this one. So if it's a time of the year we need to do some kind of insurance analysis or just reviewing insurance, I'll plug in just the insurance data points and then translate that into this one-page scorecard. And then obviously the other key points over here, like maybe this is just a template. So some other things I'll probably adjust or some of these headings over here to be more focused towards that. But the main thing is the visuals can be customized within the tool that I'm using, which is Right Capital pull this data. And then I can just take a screenshot of that and pop it into this one-page scorecard here. So as you can see in the middle, investments. So really focused around investments,
yes,
tax allocation, right? And concentration and investment breakdown. And then the top right, I have, if you just want to look at your net worth balance sheet. So kind of customize these things throughout the year where the client can just get a really quick visual of what's going on. And then even you can either use this stuff as like a touch point like I do, or you may have a meeting around it, right? So this may be like part of the meeting agenda that you want to talking through insurance or just reviewing net worth or the investment meeting that you have with them.
Yeah, well, it just pairs so nicely with the concept of a service calendar approach where you have a very structured way that you're reaching out to clients to talk about very specific planning items, as opposed to we're going to do a client review meeting and it might cover insurance, it might cover estate planning or investments, depending on whatever's going on in that client's life that at that point. Here you're probing it a little bit more and putting a little bit more direction as to what you want to cover. And it draws that attention to the client to something specific in their financial plan, whether it's insurance or investment. So I think that's a terrific way of doing it.
Yeah, exactly. And, I haven't seen a lot of one-page plans really focus on those things. And it's really easy using, technology nowadays because you already enter all the data. So if the data you've entered is able to spit out some information for you, like on these snapshot reports, you can use it and then customize it to what you want to target for that client that quarter or month or, during meetings.
Yeah, no, I think that's just incredible. So Travis, one other question over here, just in terms of your time to develop this, like I'm seeing a little bit over here about it. How automated can we make it? I know it's not terribly automated. There's some copy and pasting you have to do or some screenshots. Just from a time standpoint, how long has it taken you to put these charts together for clients?
So it really depends. So if you're looking at something like this, you can pull this data from a spreadsheet like I did. You can even pull it from your planning software if it's broken down into cash flows, right, for each expense line. But for Sankey, after you have, because Sankey is a little different, you have to have the kind of codes built out for it to translate into this chart. It usually takes me about 10 to 20 minutes to update this because I've already got it all set up. And then obviously the one-page scorecard, because I have this templated in Canva already, all I have to do is go in here and adjust the goals and objectives, any savings, any important dates coming up. So this could take anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes, depending on how in depth it is, how much detail needs to go into it. But because all this data is already entered into the planning software, such as these metrics here that you see, that's just a simple screenshot and pull it over into this. And then the top right, obviously, for those that are familiar with the Holista plan, I grab that data from the Holista plan report when I create a projection for clients.
Wait, I saw some other people there. Just for a second, drill into that a little bit more. So you're using Holista plan to pull in some information here. It's not just Right Capital, correct?
Correct. So everything you see here is basically Right Capital, which is this data, these metrics here. The key figures come from Holista plan. And then the entire scorecard is created in Canva. So the Canva template,
yes,
and then which I update this just as you would typing into it, and then screen grab here that comes into the metric area here, and then Holista plan screen grab here.
Got it. Okay, that's terrific. Well, thank you so much. So there's been tons of talk going on, Travis, right now while you've been presenting here. And so we're going to try to open it up in a little bit here, just so we can talk about some of the questions that are coming through. But Mike, I want to transition over to you. I'd love to hear what you're doing over with all the work you're doing, because that's incredible as well.
Yeah. I mean, actually, this is kind of perfect because a lot of the stuff that Travis said will overlap. I felt like I had a little too much that I was going to try to show, so I'll be able to blow through a good amount of the stuff without, and be able to get to the second half of it. So, I mean, I guess first from my perspective, as far as like from the visual side, it's pretty similar to what Travis was saying too, as far as just like I'm very much of a visual person. And so as from the get-go, I was trying to figure out how to communicate stuff in a more visual fashion. So I came from the software world. And so it's kind of a similar thing where, whenever you're trying to describe software architecture, like you can't do that with words, like you have to use visuals. So that's why, I have the whiteboard back here. It's like from the get-go, it's like, okay, I'm going to whiteboard stuff and try to explain things kind of in that way.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So that's something that all three of us have in common, is that we need to explain things in a visual manner. And so we've just kind of made our own evolution to build it out in our process. Yep.
So yeah, I mean, should I just
go right ahead? Yeah,
stuff?
let's see what you got.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, as far as what I've done, and it's definitely been, it evolves as I go, for sure. So yeah, first here I'll here, I'll share my screen here. So first, this is a lot of the stuff. It's so kind of similar to Travis. The way that I would do stuff is I was very big into trying to consolidate how much information you actually show to a client during a meeting, because whenever you think about how much time you actually spend with clients in a year. I spoke at XY just a little bit ago, and kind of we're talking about this, where it's like, we get in front of clients, 2 times a year, usually, like I do up to quarterly, right? But even that, you're talking with a client and actually presenting with them for, a few hours a year, right?
Right.
So that time is super valuable. And so that's why, like, I was very, very, cognizant of, it's like, okay, I'm just going to try to boil this stuff down as quickly as possible. And if they want to get into the details, then we can do that. But like, let's just kind of consolidate all this stuff. So it's a similar kind of thing what Travis is doing with, like, just pulling the highlights from different places so that it kind of can create this one story. So first I'll just go through just kind of a sample plan. So Sonia and James are fake people. So I'm not showing you any real information. Travis does it in Canva. I do it in Google Slides. And so one thing that I kind of liked about doing stuff within Google Slides is that you can kind of feed information in smaller bits just from the transition perspective. And so here's my first bit, which is just the, it's everybody's 1-page financial plan, right? So called it snapshot. And so, you can just kind of pop in like one thing at a time. So, starting with the core values and, like, focusing on what's really important. I'm going to go through some of this pretty quick, but it's like do highlights as far as like giving some space to say what have we actually accomplished, right? To kind of have some time to celebrate actually doing well, right? And then different high level numbers here. And then, a net worth history. And the stuff that I'm showing here. So this is within slides, or if there's any sort of visuals like graphs like this, then it's a Google sheet that's behind it, right? And so this was kind of before, this was actually the, like what I was doing before the Right Capital snapshot came out, right?
Okay.
Because actually, I guess, fun fact, Travis and I were like the Right Capital. I feel like we can take a little bit of credit for the Right Capital snapshot, because it was like from Twitter, where we kind of were showing this kind of stuff. And then we talked with Right Capital and then said, like, hey, it would be awesome if you could just pop these different modules in and out and, be able to drive, because it's like someone in their 30s has a different need than a retiree, right? Of like what they care about.
Right.
So like being able to kind of flip things in and out.
Right. And you're talking, with like the snapshots, how they're module based, so you can move different parts out. So for one client, distribution is really important, but for another client, they're not doing any distributions. Right. They're still working. So you want to be able to customize that.
Right. Yep. So then, I have stuff like that. Net worth history, then, sometimes I'll do this, a SCOT analysis or a SWOT analysis. Mm-hmm. So like strengths, challenges, all that kind of stuff. And then, there's the classic investment pie chart. And then another thing that I like to do that gets a little bit more into the personalization part of it is actually talking through like what exactly they're actually saving for and their progress on that stuff. And so I'll do these savings goals with people too. Right? And then, possibly doing just like, okay, what's the next steps? Like what have we done, and what's really just the most important thing that's coming up. Right.
Right. And this is all getting built out in a version of some of the Google products that are out there.
So you can do it in Google Slides. Or you can do it in PowerPoint and Excel too, right?
Right.
And shameless plug. So this is all stuff that I talked about in the Kitsis Value Summit last December. And following off of that, then there were a bunch of people that said like, hey, is this a template that you sell? And so I do now. So if you go to beautifulfinancialplan.com, then this is
a version of the
yeah,
what's available.
Yeah, like
there.
all this stuff that I'm showing is stuff that you could create off of that.
Right. Which that's such an interesting theme, just where technology is going. Like we're seeing that in a number of places with advisors that have baked up a version of something that speaks to them and their clients and how they do business. And there's enough interest where they're in an economical way, you're packaging this up and able to monetize it to some extent, all the work that you've put in, and let other advisors, instead of having other advisors reinvent the wheel, you make it available. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's totally an accidental entrepreneurship with this. Is just, it was just like, hey, this is what I do, right? And then there was just enough demand for it. So so that's kind of the snapshot. And with this and kind of with the layout, that kind of what we were saying, like you can flip modules and plug different things inside of here. And so this is more just to like for us to mentally be able to segment out. It's like, okay, what's the type of information that I want to be able to show to my clients, right? And so if you had something else and you like, they don't care about the specific investment stuff, but they want to see, their life insurance stuff, then there's a separate life insurance module that you can just pop in there.
Yeah.
Right. And kind of to that point, this next one is just kind of another version of this and it's leveraging similar to what Travis is doing, that you just kind of leverage what Right Capital has already done, or whatever planning software that you're using, what it's already done. And yeah, I'm similarly a big fan of the blueprint that they released recently.
So just a question: when you're presenting this to a client, are you presenting this and then saying, look at these trends or these observations that I'm seeing, or are you presenting this to them and then hoping that they see something?
Right. So the way that I think about it, as far as like the story or the journey that I'm taking them through, is what's going on right now. Right. So this first one is like, okay, where are we right now? Saying like, this is what we value. Here's our current snapshot as far as the net worth and, all that kind of stuff. And so this is more just getting us grounded with having a common understanding with current state. Right.
Got it. Yep.
So, and kind of to your point, then the next thing that I like to talk through with people is to visualize being intentional with your time. Right. And so this is just, it's a super basic view. It's a table that's inside of here. Right. But similar to what Travis was saying, whenever I pull this up, then people lean in and can really start to visualize how they're going to spend their time. Mm-hmm. Right. And so I'll do this. Just, some of it using the information that I've already gathered as far as like the ages of the clients and their kids and things like that. And then you can back into, when your kids start kindergarten and when they turn 16 and when they graduate high school and all that kind of stuff. Right. And then I apologetically point out how whenever people turn 40 and milestone ages and things like that.
Got to point it out.
Yep. And I just like doing it this way just because like you actually feel the time a little bit more. It's not just like, milestone dates or anything like that. That's all in a row. Like you can actually feel how many more summers you have before your kids graduate high school, things like that.
Yep.
Right. And so I think this is one that really draws in both parties, like both, like if it's a client couple that, because this isn't about money at all. Right. So it kind of facilitates the conversation a little bit better.
Yeah, right? That's terrific. Yep.
Okay. And then so kind of what Travis was just showing. So yeah, it's like I've been doing the Sankey-matic or these Sankey diagrams really from the jump. I actually looked back and I if there's a little bit of time I can show this like kind of ad that I did back in 2018 with a little Sankey diagram trying to describe what true financial planning is. So yeah, but I'll generate this stuff. And with this, I purposefully do this in priority order too, right? So it kind of helps them not only just how much is coming in and where it's all going, but also trying to prioritize stuff. So, being intentional of, hey, like if you're going to give to charity, you kind of do that off the top, you got to pay your taxes and then try to pay yourself before you start burning all your money on living expenses and everything.
Right.
Right. And so it has all that stuff, and then be able to, and then you see over here, this is similarly, like I'm actually running tax projections in a holistic plan and being able to show kind of where they land in the tax brackets.
Okay. So similar to Travis, there's holistic plan is
right.
In this case behind the scenes.
Right.
But are you doing a screen capture or copy and paste off of that? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds really manual, and kind of to what Travis was saying, like really once you get your process down, it doesn't actually take it doesn't take that long. Right. So I feel like that scares a lot of people away, but it's actually not that bad at all. Right. And then I have a whole separate soapbox of like, we get paid a lot of money to do this stuff for clients, that it's okay if we take an extra 20 minutes to actually to try to save the clients time and be more effective for the clients. Right. So that's a whole separate thing.
Yeah. No.
Yep. That's kind of what I forgot about this one. This one is more specific so I work with a lot of people in the tech world, and so a lot of equity compensation. And so this is a more recent one that I've created that will basically, there's a backing spreadsheet that you can plug in just the grant information, the vesting schedule and how many RSUs are vesting. And then both Google and Excel have functions to be able to pull in historical stock prices. Mm-hmm. So like I tell them that this isn't like gospel or anything like that, but it's able to pull the price of RSUs whenever they vet on the date that they vest, and to be able to say, okay, this is how much income was realized on those particular dates.
So here that you have a little bit of automation behind it just to pull some of the numbers or the calculations to save you a step. Right?
Yeah. I mean, in Google Sheets, it's Google Finance, and in Excel, it's stock history.
Right.
So, yep. So then that's helps them visualize both, just their RSU income on an annual basis, like per month. And then also, the big gotcha with RSUs is estimated taxes being due, like not withholding enough.
Right.
And so be able to kind of point that out, and then to give a lot of people have trading windows that they have to deal with. And so try to estimate, hey, here's the trading windows that you have. And then if they have to pay estimated taxes, then kind of give them an idea of like, hey, this is when these estimated taxes are due for, whatever quarter you're in.
Yeah, that kind of goes back to what I was sharing before about the 4 steps of visual thinking. It's like, you look at this, there's a lot to take in at first, but after you spend 30 seconds, you start to see some different themes and things pop out at you. Maybe it is that estimated taxes, or maybe it's the trading windows.
Right.
That's really cool.
Yep. Yeah. So, and then the more recent thing that I've been super jazzed about, that I've been doing is, so this is what I've been doing with clients for, up to this point, where, we do all this stuff and I show it this way. And then if they want to see it, then I create a PDF, I upload it into their Right Capital Vault, and then they can go pull it. So it was actually somebody that approached me after the XYPN talk, where he mentioned Google Sites. And so I've started playing with it, where basically instead of creating a Google sheet, or I'm sorry, a Google slide, that I actually can create an actual, like a personalized website for people. The one caveat is they have to have a Gmail account. So we're sharing specifically to a Google account, because we don't want this, like from a security perspective.
Right. So it is lock it down a bit.
Right. But then, like within here, we're able to have a more interactive version of everything that we're just talking about. right? So like on the front page of the site, it's essentially, it's a lot of the same stuff that we just walked through, right? Like just front and center, it's just like, okay, what's the latest information that, like, what did we talk about last, right? Going through, you know, the core values, the highlights, the Scott analysis. And then, you know, you can add little nice personalized touches of, you know, change this background to actually be, you know, either something that they, you know, something that relates to their core values, right? So I had some clients that they want to visit all the national parks. And so I, you know, put a little map of the national parks behind there, stuff like that, right? And then, you know, have the high level numbers, the same snapshot view. And then also, like, since it's a website, then now you can also be more interactive to say, hey, if you need to go, if this looks off, go view and update your stuff in Write Capital, and we can link them directly into there.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah, there's some kind words coming in over here for what you're doing over here on the
Cool.
chat. So it's very cool.
Yeah. I'll read it later and stroke my ego. And then, so similar to like the, you know, the savings goals. So with Google Sites, it's really good at being able to pull in information from the other Google suite of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can pull in your charts really easily, and it keeps it updated too, right?
So, yeah, so you're creating a link between the two. So you update in one, and you know it'll update over here.
Yeah, I mean, I actually like this other tab is like how you actually put together the site, right? And it's a super intuitive way of doing it, right? But then this, you know, yeah, this part here is just like pulling in from the sheet. So you can just say like insert chart, and then it will list all of your Google Sheets, and then you pick the one that's for that client, and then you can bring in the stuff.
That's
yeah.
You're a wizard.
Hey, it's tell the engineers at Google, they're the ones that are putting this stuff together, right? But yeah, similarly, that's like, you know, I have, you know, they're saving for Hawaii, so I'm going to put the Nepali coast in the background, right? And then that calendar that we have, like this one, it's like for actual clients, like it would actually be that Google slide, so they can actually open it up and change things if they need to and all that stuff. And then have their cash flow here, right? And then all that stuff that are in the notes, you can just expand these and be able to see all that stuff.
So one question that we're getting quite a bit over here, and Travis, I'd like you to weigh in on this too, but walk me through from a compliance standpoint. What are you guys running into over there? How has that been? I think we're talking about, I mean, broker dealer issue or just compliance in general.
Yeah, I mean, the way that I'm approaching it right now is, so I mean, this particular one is definitely new as far as you know, that they're able to see this live site. I mean, the actual Google site file is being archived, and inside of the Google site, you can also see all of the published history, right? Like you can see all the version history inside of here. And so from a compliance standpoint, I can say that, hey, if they looked at this site on, you know, October 30th of 2022, I can go pull that version and say, this is exactly what they saw. Right. So there's that part. And then also just like with any other PDF that you create, that like all that stuff's archived. So.
Right. Travis, anything?
Very, very, very similar. I just obviously, since I'm a firm owner, have to do all my own compliance, right? And you know, it's just a matter of documenting everything, similar to what Mike said, and making sure that you know, you provide the full disclosures and assumptions and everything. Which obviously, for clients, that's all in the planning software, right? So if they want any of the details, the planning assumptions, things like that go into the one-page plan or the full plan, like that's all that can be pulled from the reports and attached alongside of the one-page plans, for example, in their portal or wherever you store the documents.
Right. Yeah, and just there's still some chatter going on here, especially for the portal or the pages that Mike's talking about. You have to have a Google account the clients have to have a Google
Right.
account before they can log in. So it's not just a publicly accessible page. It is
Right.
locked down.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, that's the approach, is that it's like, yes, it's still restricted to their named accounts. And even still with that, like, I'm not going to put any really sensitive information inside of here. I'm still going to use Right Capital's vault for actual document sharing and things like that. So I'm going to be mindful of the sensitivity of the information inside of here too. So.
Yeah. So I'm going to kind of jump around to some questions here, but Mike, the RSUs, that screen that you shared, was that was something you've developed? That's not other software that you have. That's your the beautiful.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I haven't really found too much from I'll admit I haven't tried Stockopter or some of the other. But yeah, I mean, most of the equity comp planning is just at a place where it's like, okay, you kind of have to roll your own a little bit.
Right.
So yeah, I know we're on a Right Capital thing, but I struggle to try to do the stock comp planning within Right Capital. And so yeah, that all that stuff is just in a separate sheet.
In a separate sheet, but it's available through the beautiful financial plans.
Yeah, the RSU ones are.
The RSU. Yep. Okay.
Yep.
Well, great.
Yep. So I guess I know I might be a little bit over. I was wanting to share one other thing, just to give a little bit of plug for FpPathfinders too, since we're on a Right Capital and fpPathfinders thing.
I'll take it.
So within, kind of expanding on this idea of being able to do something like this is kind of like also not just the one-page stuff, but being able to have more specific stuff for particular planning topics. So like one from an equity comp perspective, that like I'll have the RSU stuff. It's whenever I'm on Zoom, it takes a little bit for this stuff to load, but like it's a lot of the similar charts here, right? But then also like for stock options for ISOs, that you can pull in, like you can kind of have some good information where it's whether you have your own video or you pull in the fpPathfinders checklists that are related to that particular thing. And then other charts for like stock option values. And then this is a visual that I'm kind of playing around with, as far as like trying to visualize whenever you exercise options of like what your actual take home amount will be depending on what the stock price does, and then the effect of if it becomes qualifying. So once you get past the 1 year from one year from exercise, 2 year from grant, that you'll have the better tax treatment. But then this can actually show that tax savings can get eaten up pretty quickly by the stock price going down.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So
yeah. All right. So we've got a couple of minutes left over here, and there's a theme I'm picking up on some of the questions here, is just getting started. Like, you guys are light years ahead of where we are. What's the next step? What should we do to get started? And I think in some cases here, some people might not even be using Right Capital. So like, just like planning tools agnostic. How do people get started?
I mean, it's boring advice, but just get started. Find some topic that applies to one of your clients, for example, and create a visual or a one-page plan, right? But the thing with getting started is with these visuals is you can't get hung up on being perfect, because I can't tell you how many hours I've spent on that one-page plan, probably way more than I ever should have, to like tweak it and make it perfect. So, and then the client probably doesn't even notice any of the tweaks I've made. Right. So just get started, pick a topic or a subject, create a visual on it, present it. A lot of times when I'm creating something new, I actually don't even use it with a client yet. I throw it out there on social media and just get mass feedback from it, and just say, hey, I wonder, what are people's reaction? What's good, what's bad? And you can develop a pretty good sounding board from other people and fine tune your visual or deliverable, whatever you're working on.
Yeah. Great advice. Mike, anything else to add?
No, I mean, it's a similar thing where, yeah, half of this stuff, like I wouldn't even have dreamed of doing it until I felt like there was a client that had a problem where it's like, okay, how do I show this to them? And yeah, and I do want to kind of empower people that like none of this, and I don't mean it to sound flippant, but it's like we're not using super sophisticated tools, right? We're using Word, and we're using PowerPoint, and we're using Excel or the Google versions of that stuff, right? And so just kind of leaning into that, then you're able to get a lot of stuff, right?
Yeah, and so I echo that too. I took a different approach with a lot of my work. Before fpPathfinder got started, I was making flowcharts to help explain concepts, and I was using it for myself. It was an internal tool. And then I found it to be helpful where I was starting to show it to clients, and then it started to morph into a marketing aspect. So sometimes it's just things that we're already using or we're using internally to help us.
Right.
Once we get to that point where you're having that eureka moment and go, oh, look at this new trend I've just identified here, I'm going to go show the client. Well, that's an opportunity right there to say, maybe I can package that up and actually share that with clients.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let's see. I'm trying to see if there's any other final points here. We've got just 4 minutes left. Got a lot of stuff on security. Anybody using other types of software out there? So I can comment on this. We're talking a lot about Google products. There are a ton of others out there. Tableau is another. A lot of what we are talking about here is really taking financial planning related information and putting it out there to clients. There's a whole other angle to consider about how do we just explain a complicated concept. Carl Richards does some really cool things with visualizations there, taking concepts about saving for the long term, and he's packaging it up into a little sketch and giving that to a client to illustrate a concept, because that speaks a lot more than just writing something up or having to talk to a client directly. So there's a lot of different areas to look at. The blog post that I wrote, I shared a link out earlier, that covers a lot as well.
Yep. I guess maybe the only other thing that kind of comes to mind, it's somewhat from the visual perspective, but also just from like how to communicate information to clients, is that rather than typing up long emails to create a Loom video, that's like kind of in conjunction with the stuff that you created, where it's like, okay, you create it and then you have a Loom video where you explain it a little bit more and then you send that to them. I feel that works way better than trying to type stuff up.
Yeah. So drill into that just for a moment. So instead of typing up the email to introduce something, you're just recording yourself on a video, and then you send the link to that video video to the client.
Yep. Yeah. And then you can download, and from the compliance standpoint, you can download that video file and archive it with the rest of your communication too.
That's terrific. And Travis, I guess last point here, when you are teeing these deliverables up to clients, how are you sending them out like one client at a time? Are you writing an intro at all to it? How do you present this and tee this up for them?
Yeah, so right now, most of them are just presented in meetings. So just communicating with them, throughout the meeting on whether it's one-page plan or the cash flow meeting where I'm looking at the Sankey diagram and kind of showing them, hey, here's your current situation, here's the proposals that we may make. But as I mentioned in my updated kind of planning process where I have the different one-page plans throughout the year, that I'm probably going to use some Loom videos, which I currently use with clients. And with a Loom video, you can essentially take the one-page plan, explain it to the client, explain that current topic like insurance or investments that are in that one-page plan, and send it to them, and they can review that on their own time. And then you've got a touch point with the client. You've got a one-page plan that's specific to time frame or that quarter or month that you want to give that deliverable.
That's perfect. Well, thank you very much. I think that we are up on time over here. Amy, Stacia,
Yes.
any closing comments?
Yeah, just closing comments. First of all, thank everybody for sharing their time and their knowledge with this group of advisors that registered and came to our presentation today, and you'll get it in the follow-up. Also, if you want any more information from fpPathfinder Right Capital, the information is on this final screen from Mike. You can also follow Mike Zung and Travis on Twitter. They have amazing feeds. I follow them myself, and it's terrific. We do have some Q&As left that we may not have gotten to. If we have missed anything, I will be sharing those Q&As with our participants, and if we have the opportunity, if we have your email and we know who has submitted the question, we will get back to you so that you're not left hanging at the end. So I think that's about all from us today. Thank you to Annie Ahari. Thank you to Ted Denbo, Mike Lecours, Mike Zung, and Travis Gatzemeier for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is terrific. All right, thank you,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Thanks for coming.